Do you ever wake up, stare out the window, and wonder, is this it? The routines, the silence, the familiar furniture, all the same. But deep down, there's a flicker. Maybe faint, but it's there. A quiet voice that whispers, I still have more living to do. Let me tell you something important. You're not too old, and it's not too late. No matter what anyone has told you, reinvention isn't just for the young. It's for anyone who still breathes, who still dreams, even if those dreams have been buried under decades of responsibilities, routines, or simply survival. And if you're over 65, there's something beautiful about the stage of life you're in right now. You're not chasing a career. You're not raising little ones. You're not bound by the same rules as before. This is your second act, and you get to write it however you want. So if you've ever felt like life became a bit smaller than it used to be, this conversation is for you. We're going to talk about 5 powerful, doable ways you can reinvent yourself after 65. Not by becoming someone different, but by reconnecting with the parts of yourself that maybe got lost along the way. Let's begin. You know, one of the biggest myths people believe is that their best days are behind them. But let's flip that. What if your most fulfilling days, your most authentic moments, are still ahead? And it all starts with one thing, letting go of the old story. So many of us carry a personal story that's written in stone. I was the caregiver. I worked in accounting for 40 years. I never finished school. I'm not creative. But here's the truth. Those are just chapters. They're not the whole book. You can decide right now to close the cover on one volume and start writing a brand new one. Letting go of the old story means giving yourself permission to evolve. It might sound simple, but it can feel scary, because when you've worn the same identity for decades, wife, husband, parent, worker, it becomes hard to imagine yourself outside of that. But you are more than any one title. You are a complex, evolving human being with layers, interests, quirks, and gifts that haven't even seen the light of day yet. Take Ellen, for example. She was a retired librarian at 68, convinced she had nothing left to offer. Then one day, her granddaughter asked for help organizing her bedroom. Ellen lit up. She didn't just tidy up, she transformed that space like a pro. Turns out she had a natural talent for home design and organization. Today, she offers virtual consulting for seniors downsizing their homes, something she never imagined doing at 70. And it all started with one shift, letting go of the idea that her story was already finished. So ask yourself, what old title or label have you outgrown? And what would happen if you set it down, even just for a little while, and ask, who else could I be? Once you start loosening your grip on that old identity, something powerful happens. You create space for curiosity, and that's where reinvention really begins. And that brings us to something just as important, trying something new, even if you're terrible at it. Let's be honest, nobody likes to feel like a beginner. We get used to being good at things, and it's humbling, sometimes embarrassing, to start from scratch. But what if the goal wasn't to be good? What if the goal was just to feel alive again? There's a kind of magic in doing something completely new. Taking a watercolor class, learning to play the ukulele, starting a blog, joining a walking club where you don't know a single person. Yes, you'll feel awkward. You might fumble. You might think, what am I doing here? But that awkwardness, that's growth. That's your brain lighting up in ways it hasn't in years. At 66, Jim signed up for an adult improv class, not because he wanted to be a comedian light, but because he realized he hadn't laughed from his gut in a long time. The first class, he froze, couldn't think of a single line. But the second time, he relaxed. And by the third class, he was riffing jokes with people half his age and loving every second. Trying something new reignites the joy of discovery. And when you give yourself permission to not be perfect, the pressure melts away. You get to be playful again, curious again. That's where the spark lives. Not in polished outcomes, but in the messy, human, delightful process of learning. And if that inner voice is already whispering something to you, like a class you've been thinking about or a skill you've always admired in others, follow it. Don't silence it with logic. Don't wait for a sign. The sign is you, right now, wanting more. Because here's the truth. Reinvention doesn't have to be a dramatic, sweeping change. It's not about packing up and moving across the country unless you want to. It's about tiny shifts that add up, tiny yeses to yourself. Yes, I want to explore that. Yes, I'll give this a try. Yes, I believe there's more for me. And that yes, that's where everything changes. Now that we've cracked open the door to possibility by letting go of the old story and daring to try something new, let's keep that momentum going. Because once the heart is awake, it starts to pull us toward what's next, toward something deeper. Because once you start saying yes to yourself, you begin to remember that you're still becoming. And that brings us to something powerful, finding purpose in the present, not just the past. For so many years, your purpose might have been tied to taking care of others, raising kids, holding down a job, making sure everyone else was okay. But now maybe the house is quieter, the phone doesn't ring as often, the calendar isn't as full, and that can feel disorienting. You might ask yourself, what do I do with my time now? What's the point of my day? Let me tell you this, purpose isn't something that disappears with age. It shifts. It becomes more inward, more intentional, and it doesn't have to be big or loud to be meaningful. Sometimes purpose is as simple as being the person who makes the best cup of tea for your neighbor, or calling someone you know is lonely and just listening, or planting something in the garden, not just for yourself, but because you know someone else will enjoy it too. These moments aren't small, they're sacred. They remind you that you matter, that you still have something to give. At 72, Carol started writing short notes to people in her retirement community. Just a little thinking of you, or I remember the story you told me about your dog, thank you. She never expected much. But within weeks, people started opening up to her. They told her they felt seen, less alone. And in that quiet act of kindness, Carol found something that lit her up again. A small act, a big purpose. Purpose doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up when you follow what feels meaningful, what lights you up, what helps someone else, even in the tiniest way. And if you're not sure where your purpose lives these days, start by paying attention to what makes you feel just a little more alive. That's usually the trail to follow. Now, once you start reconnecting with purpose, something else starts to happen. You begin to feel braver, more open, and you start craving connection. Not just with others, but with yourself. That's why another powerful part of reinventing yourself is surrounding yourself with people who see your new light. It's so easy, especially as we get older, to settle into the same circles, the same conversations, the same roles we've always had. But what if those roles don't quite fit you anymore? What if the people around you only see who you were, not who you're becoming? Reinvention requires air and light. And sometimes it means stepping into new spaces, meeting new people, trying new communities, where you don't have to explain your past, you can just be who you are today. It might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but those first steps can be so freeing. John, at 69, joined a local photography group. He'd always loved taking pictures, but never shared them. At first, he worried, what if they're not good enough? But the people he met didn't care about good enough. They saw his eye for beauty. They saw him. And in their encouragement, John found confidence to explore something that had quietly been calling him for years. That kind of support is priceless. Because the truth is, when we try to grow in the wrong soil around people who don't support us, it's hard to thrive. But when we plant ourselves where we're seen, where we're celebrated, something extraordinary begins to bloom. So maybe it's time to ask, who lifts you up? Who makes you feel more like you, not less? And where could you go? What group, what club, what cafe, what online space where people are open, curious, kind? It doesn't have to be a crowd. Even one person who truly sees you can make all the difference. And you never know, your story, your courage to try something new might inspire them to do the same. Now, as you begin to loosen the grip on your old story, as you say yes to new experiences, as you tune in to a deeper sense of purpose, and surround yourself with people who truly see you, something begins to shift on the inside. It's subtle at first, but then it grows. You wake up with a little more energy. You look forward to the day just a bit more. You start feeling that tingle of excitement, not because everything's perfect, but because you're back in motion. You're becoming again. And that's where the real magic of reinvention lives. Not in changing who you are, but in rediscovering the parts of yourself that were always there, just waiting to breathe again. Let's keep going. And once you're in motion, once you've cracked open the door to possibility, you begin to see just how much life is still out there waiting for you. But there's one more thing that ties everything together. Something that may not sound flashy, but holds incredible power. Taking small steps every day, even when you don't feel ready. You see, reinvention isn't about waking up one morning and changing everything all at once. It's not about making some grand announcement or having all the answers. It's about the quiet courage to keep moving forward, one tiny act at a time. Sometimes that step is just making a phone call, or writing one page, or getting dressed and stepping outside for a walk when you really just want to stay in bed. It's those little choices, those almost invisible shifts, that begin to create a new rhythm in your life. And no, it's not always going to feel easy. You might have days where you doubt yourself, days where you wonder, what's the point? That's normal, that's human. But you don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing to show up for your own life, willing to believe that something beautiful could still be waiting around the next corner. Willing to trust that even small changes can lead to extraordinary results when you keep going. Harriet, a widowed nurse in her early 70s, told me she spent 2 years feeling invisible after retirement. She felt like she'd poured herself into a role for so long that when it ended, she didn't know who she was without it. But then, she started volunteering just once a week at a local clinic. No pressure, no big goal, just one day. And that one day turned into new friendships, new confidence, and eventually a side project, writing stories from her nursing days that she now reads to other seniors. It didn't happen overnight. It happened step by step. And that's how it can happen for you too. So maybe today's step is turning off the TV a little earlier tonight, or calling someone you haven't spoken to in a while, or finally signing up for that class you keep thinking about. Maybe it's writing down the words, "I'm allowed to grow," and putting that note somewhere you'll see it every day. Whatever it is, start small. Start now. Because it's in those small beginnings that the biggest transformations take root. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need permission. You don't even need to feel ready. You just need to remember that your story isn't over, not by a long shot. You still have chapters left to write. Beautiful, surprising, joyful chapters. Chapters filled with new laughter, new connections, new courage, and yes, even new dreams. So if you've been waiting for a sign, let this be it. Let this be the moment you decide to believe in yourself again, to trust that your heart still has things it wants to do, to remember that no matter what your age, you are still becoming. And I want you to know you're not alone. There are people out there rooting for you, people who want to hear your voice, see your light, and walk beside you as you take these next steps. So don't keep your story locked inside. Share it, live it, let yourself be seen. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear what part resonated the most. Was there something you've been holding back on? Something that lit a spark as you listened? Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I read every one. And if you found this helpful or inspiring, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. We're building a kind and supportive community here, one where every age is celebrated and every voice matters. Because here's the truth, you're not too old, you're right on time. And your second act, it can be your best one yet. Here's to fresh starts, bold steps, and living your most authentic, fulfilling life, starting right now.